All right,
All right.
so I'm here with Nick. I've been watching your channel for a while. I really like your videos, especially your FPS and strategy game coverage. That's you do some really cool stuff. So it's good to finally be talking to you after all this time.
Thank you very much, man. Likewise, I really like your Sega Saturn and Dreamcast reviews.
Cool, man. Yeah, thank you. It's cool. I spent a lot of time in the console world when I was younger, and I missed out on a lot of the PC stuff from the 2000s. So it's cool getting to see your perspective on that. You've got a pretty good collection there. But fast forwarding to the 2015 here, I just wanted
Yeah.
to talk to you about the games, I guess, that you thought were most noteworthy this year that took up your time and your money, and just kind of throw it open like that.
I think, at least from my perspective here, was that it was a pretty lackluster year. Because I don't want to like piss off anyone who you may really enjoy the games that came out this year, and I have plenty of friends that have said, "Oh, this year was fantastic," but I felt this year was very mediocre, I guess, because we had like early on in the year we had the Order 1886, which was it was a big it was a pretty big game, years of development, a decent amount of hype. It was going to be the bit of a console seller apparently for the PS4, and it really came out, and most people kind of just looked at it and was like it was just a very cinematic, heavy third-person shooter, cover-based, same old, same old. Let me see. That's right. Battlefront. Again, Battlefront was a game that came out with a huge amount of promise. People thought, oh my god, holy shit, Battlefront 3 by the guys who made Battlefield, this is going to be a match made in heaven. Comes out, and again, for a lot of people, not everyone, but for a lot of people, it's just a very nice looking Star Wars game instead of being a really good Battlefront game, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's interesting because like I know I haven't actually had the chance to play Battlefront yet. Star Wars Battlefront, I should say. I like Star Wars, but I'm not mental about it.
Fair
So
enough.
I just haven't really gotten around to it. But I've heard a lot of mixed about it. A lot of it seems to be getting a lot of negative feedback. And I don't even know why that is. Can you shed some light on that?
I think for a lot of people, because I know I played about the first two Battlefront games when they basically came out, so I kind of understand like when I like being young and playing these games almost religiously with my brother, and they were great cooperative games you could play, and they were just a lot of fun. Now, if you play Battlefront 1 and 2 now, they're pretty much garbage single players, but excellent multiplayer experience with friends and a buddy next to you. It's going to be a fantastic time. And I think for a lot of people, waiting 10 years for a sequel to this game that they've been waiting for years, like, you had LucasArts that didn't touch it, and then you have finally, Disney buying out Star Wars, and then you finally think, oh shit, this is going to be, finally we might get Battlefront 3. Dice gets it. The new trailers that come out look amazing. We see the trailers at E3; they look amazing in terms of graphics, and then we actually see the actual betas and with the contents that's there, and it's all very. I don't really want to say the term, but it was very casual, I guess.
Mm.
Um, and I think
Just in terms of, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, no. Go ahead, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, like, in terms of content, it seems casual because that's one of the things I've heard is it's kind of light on content, but I don't know if it's actually kind of shaved off the mechanics of I guess, the Battlefront shooter engine, or if it's still all there.
Well, it's sort of through my experience of the games would be that the original Battlefront games aren't that good per se mechanically. Like they have a lot of problems, a lot of balancing issues and stuff, but they had a lot of charm to them. Like they were very much like you played a Battlefront game. It was a different experience from anything else you've played, and you have Battlefront, the 2015 edition coming out, and for a lot of people, it's just another, it's just a carbon copy of a lot of other FPS games they played, like Call of Duty, Battlefield, Halo, Destiny, and I think that's what really
Yeah.
annoyed a lot of people is that it kind of feels. Now I think, now in all honesty, it isn't a terrible game. It's just a very it's not a terrible Star Wars game. It's a great Star Wars game, really. It's more of a very, but it's an average. It's a bad Battlefront game, if you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think, and that's a really good point too. Um, And Star Wars, I think, has almost avoided that for a very long time in that its games were built for gamers, but also Star Wars fans. And Battlefront, at least
Mm.
from what I understand you're saying, is almost built for a more casual, maybe Star Wars fan who isn't a huge gamer, but just happens to own a console.
Yeah, if I can easily see someone who has never played a Battlefront game going into Star Wars Battlefront and just enjoying the hell out of it, and I can easily see that. But for me, who has played the original Battlefront games for years, it's hard for your nostalgia not to blind you a little bit, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you kind of, even if it's not fair when you're a fan of a genre or a series, you inadvertently judge it against the rest of the games in that series, even if it's, just taking a different route, you have to as a fan. So I definitely understand where you're coming from there.
Because there was some good games that came out this year, and I think for most people, the game of the year for a lot of people would probably be Witcher 3.
Mm.
That
Yeah, that was
you go on, go on.
yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, that was a big one. That's I mean, I guess it kind of came out middle of the year. What did it come out? May or June?
I think it was I think it was June. No, no,
Yeah, yeah. I'm
it was probably yeah, June. All right.
okay. Well, yeah, sometime around summer, yeah, is when it came out. And yeah, I wanted actually a free copy of it. I
Yes.
wasn't actually gonna play it at first, but I ended up because I'd never played the series. I always thought it looked cool, but I'd never really gotten into it. And so I went into it just without really knowing what I was getting into. And it's one of those games I think that I can appreciate so much from a technical level.
Mm.
I thought the gameplay was, really good, really deep. As far as RPGs go, it's basically, I think you'd have a hard time arguing it wasn't one of, if not the best around, really since the inception of video games.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, I was so overwhelmed, I think, by it. And maybe it was just because I didn't have a history with the series, but I actually didn't get all the way through it. I actually put it down and I haven't come back to it for a number of months.
Oh,
Not to bash the game because
that's
it
fine. It's
is really
fine.
cool. It's just it didn't quite grab me in the way I'd hoped it would. What about you?
Well, because I'm a bit of an idiot for doing this. I won it in the competition last year because that's actually how we actually came into contact. Um,
Yeah, that's right, the GOG contest. Yeah.
mm, it was really cool and it was a lot of fun. But hopefully they'll do it again next year. But anyway, what I thought was, I mean, I unfortunately because I don't really have a history with the games, and partly because I've played a little bit of Witcher 2 and a very small amount of Witcher 1, but my feelings towards it was that they were good games. They were good games, but I think a lot of the theming and the setting were kind of lost on me because again I can easily see it to be the fantasy, the dream game for a lot of dark fantasy fans, but for someone like me who usually has only really played more sci-fi and traditional based RPGs and some JRPGs, I kind of wasn't as engaged by it, so I never really really played the third game because basically the same with the I mean I thought it was a really fun competition. I'm glad the guys at GOG hosted it, but I still think it was I think for me, like, I mean, kudos to Project CD Red for doing it, for making this pretty excellent series of games. But I think it's gonna be. I think the Witcher games are always gonna be kind of a more of a niche kind of audience for RPG fans.
Yeah, I would actually be really interested to see. So every once in a while, they'll release stats of like how many people actually complete a game,
Mm.
and I'd be really interested to see how many people complete Witcher 3, or even how far they get, because it was a huge game, and it was the first one in the series to really take off into the mainstream, with all of their marketing, and it sold very well. But I would be very curious to see how many people actually saw it through to the end. And that's not like a bash on casual gamers picking it up
Oh
because
no.
they thought it looked cool and not completing it. Because I think you and I probably both consider ourselves hardcore gamers, and yeah, we neither of us got through it either. So
Well, I didn't
yeah,
even
the
get
Witcher
to.
3, it was
Yeah, go on. Go on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, it was a very cool game, but definitely for a specific taste. They didn't try and water it down for the masses. This was still a very hardcore game
Mm,
that they just marketed to the masses, and I think a lot of people bit off more than they could chew with it. So
true, true. I have more respect for the game, even though I haven't played it. I have more respect for it based on the fact that it's not stooping down and saying let's be mainstream by cutting out what older fans like about the game, and I can really respect that.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, nothing but props to them. I think it goes a long way to say sometimes you can respect a game without actually, being a fan of it or having to
Oh
play
yeah,
it.
absolutely.
And yeah, Witcher 3 is definitely one of those games. I think for me. So
Like if I had to give probably a game of the year, I'd probably give it to like Bloodborne because Bloodborne did something that was completely different from pretty much every other game this year, and that was that it started off as a very, I guess, not really traditional, but very straightforward kind of dark fantasy, horror kind of video game with like werewolves, witches, warlocks, so on and so forth. And I mean, yes, definitely unique style and presentation. But I think what made it stand out so much was that it did a 180-degree twist at near the end of the game, or later on in the game, where it introduced in Lovecraft, and you had all of a sudden you were no longer fighting, traditional storybook villains. You were now fighting elder gods and shit, and it brings into this whole theming of cosmic horror into this what was originally a fairly down to earth kind of horror game.
that is really cool, and I think it just speaks volumes about From Software, and I think I haven't really come to a conclusion about why the Souls games have become as popular as they are. Like I respect them a lot.
Mm,
The only one I've played to, I guess the only one I've spent a good amount of time with was the original was Demon's Souls.
mm.
I didn't play Dark Souls a whole lot. So yeah, Bloodborne. I think it's cool that a game that difficulty is seen as okay again in some games because games nowadays, at least in my opinion, get watered down and they're really pushed out as you know you buy this game and you're gonna beat it. It's like playing a movie instead of you actually have to earn your way through the game and get better at it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool about the Souls games, and Bloodborne seemed to carry that on. I heard it was very punishingly difficult again. But yeah, even as far as art design and storytelling, it's cool to see games being made like that. And I have to give a lot of respect to it for what it is. And hopefully one day I really would like to get to play it because it does look pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely.
Did you play much of it?
Unfortunately, I was sort of like frustratingly, I was very tempted to buy MGS5. I was very tempted to buy it because I have played the series rather thoroughly. I mean, yeah, I quite like the games, but I kind of felt like when they kind of came out with the whole the ending was apparently shit, and how it was like all this cut content, and then you have to consider the fact how scummy Konami acted throughout the year. I thought it was kind of
Yeah.
wrong from an ethical point of view and kind of from a personal choice. Like, do I really want to support or even experience a game that's kind of half-assed?
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really good point. I'm sure we've all made points or decisions like that where, as silly as it may sound, because video games are supposed to be fun in the end of the day, and they're just fun, but you can make an ethical stand and choose not to purchase
Mm-hmm.
something. And yeah, I've heard some people say that actually a few conversations I've had about Metal Gear Solid 5 it was a lot of fun, but the ending was kind of you could tell that it just ran out of steam and that the Kojima Konami feud really did have an impact on the game.
Oh
And
yeah.
so yeah, no, it's a shame that fans kind of had to get the bad end of that. They couldn't work something out on the business side, so it ended up being a maybe not quite finished product, but still impressive from what I've heard.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it is still a good game. It's still a good Metal Gear Solid game, but I think when it comes, but considering that it's meant to be the finale, like the last true MGS game, I think it's going to be just a one of those games that's like going to be what if for the future.
Yeah. No, another topic I wanted to get on. it sort of spurred uh, my memory just talking about Metal Gear Solid
Go
5
ahead. Go
because
ahead.
it was a cross-platform release here. PC gaming. The main reason I ask is just because this year with PC gaming, and it didn't affect me a whole lot, mainly because I chose not to buy a lot of them. But it was a really crummy year for PC ports.
Yeah.
Everything from Mortal Kombat to Formula One to Batman, is still, as far as
Oh.
I know,
Oh yeah. That
completely
was just.
broken, unplayable.
That was a mess. That was a real.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing that, PC gaming, and I'm not trying to say PC gaming's,
Oh no. Go
the
ahead.
best there is. Yeah, there's ups and downs to both, but at the same time, it's a strange kind of twist to see so many bad PC ports, and I don't. It's just a strange trend, and I wonder why that's happening.
Oh well, it's kind of weird because you look at the because I collect PC games and shit. Um, it's kind of interesting because you look at the PC kind of game era. You have like the '90s, which was kind of like the golden age for PC gaming. You have the early
Yeah,
2000s, which came out with some really high quality PC games. But then during the late 2000s, there wasn't too much. Like you had like sure you had PC games that were big heavy hitters like Counter Strike Source, Half Life 2, Team Fortress. But obviously they're all like pretty much made by they're all pretty much made by Valve. But by I think for a lot of PC gamers, at least in the triple A market, like the mainstream, like the kind of hard copy kind of stuff, I think PC gaming is pretty much being shafted. Like you look at the actual PC games coming out, optimize a PC game for them, a PC PC port to actually make a good one, costs more money than they actually think they'll gain. And they're kind of right when you consider the fact that like 2/3 or like 3/4 of the profits they make come from console owners.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of talk over the past few years about how fast PC is growing and how eventually it will be the dominant market in one way or another. But it certainly doesn't seem like that from a publisher perspective.
Yeah,
They're still not quite willing to put the money in, even if they're willing to port the game.
PC platform so unique was that it had a lot of really original, very different games and franchises being released onto it that console owners simply could not be able to play. Like I think a good example we talk about like look at the Mech Warrior games for example. Um, they were like I mean you probably have may not have an experience with it, but they were basically a mech simulation. Now, if you look at the '90s, there was like a shit ton of mech sims all the time, coming out all the time, and now you look at the mech games coming out now, and 9 times out of 10 they're basically free to play MMOs. And I think like my experience at least of it is that PC gaming is a huge growing platform. It kind of what made it unique and really a hardcore kind of platform for a lot of users is kind of diminishing.
Mm.
And I mean,
Yeah, no, that it's true. PC has changed a lot from the way it was. Yeah, I think Steam has almost become it's almost made PC into a console in a way, which is good and bad. There's
mm-mm,
ups and downs to it. But yeah, you don't really get the mega PC game anymore. Like you said, the one that could only run on PC.
yeah,
I think it's almost been stunted by console growth. I heard that actually. Oh, there was an article I was reading. I can't remember the source anymore. A few months back, and how they were reflecting back on last generation, and how they said PlayStation 3 really kind of stunted game growth there for about 4 or 5 years, just because they had to keep building games for 360 and PS3, which was a harder system to build on. And so PCs, even though they were leaping ahead in terms of technology, there was no audience and there was no reason to build a really big PC game anymore.
because I think like an example I could probably pull out like I doubt you'll have a game like Crisis being made again for the PC, like a game that's huge, technically
Yeah.
demanding, but and it's also like difficult. It requires a level of strategy and just all this complex shit. But then you consider the fact that what does Crisis come from? It went from huge environments, huge maps, incredible graphics to smaller environments, great graphics still, but definitely smaller, more compacted and linear kind of gameplay. And to me, that was
Yeah, that's true. We probably won't ever see that again.
oh, but even then, I think actually, this is what question I was going to throw to you, and that was basically like because on this topic of like the PC gaming now and such, like what do you think the future, like where do you think the direction of gaming's going in like in a positive, negative way, and like what's your genuine view on it?
It's really tough. There's so many factors to consider. I think about this sometimes. I mean, you hear all the time in Japan, in North America, it's getting this way too, that mobile gaming is quickly becoming more profitable
Yeah,
than, traditional home console or even just box release, big, games.
like
And so that's kind of a disturbing trend.
go
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that basically like consider the fact that Activision they spend like $6 billion on Candy Crush, like a mobile game that's probably
Yeah.
it's going to be forgotten in about like 6 months. People are just going to go, "What was Candy Crush?" But you have Activision here throwing out billions of dollars at an IP
Yeah,
for just mobile gamers, and it's very much a casual, completely casual game that has no real hardcore or mainstay appeal. But here's these, massive, like, again, AAA companies, Activision, they were the ones who were pumping out, shit, they were the ones pumping out, like, MechWarrior and such back in, '95 for the PC. And here they are, pretty much investing a shit ton of money into what is essentially just, a game you play while catching the bus.
exactly. And yeah, that's very true. Just to see how the publishers have changed so drastically, like Activision there. So it's tough. I think gaming is this is either gonna be a fad, and people eventually the mobile game market will collapse in on itself, or it's gonna continue to grow, and there's gonna be a real harsh division between, I guess, independent or medium boxed games, like the Rebellion Studios
Oh,
or like
yeah.
the Interceptor Entertainment, some of those medium grade
Oh, yeah.
companies that sell, 30, $40 games as opposed to 60 or 70. And then the big publishers, they'll either go totally mobile, like Konami, is threatening to do, or they'll, go the AAA route. And I really don't know which way it's going to teeter, to tell you the truth. I don't know enough about the markets or how different areas of gaming are growing, but I definitely see a divide happening.
Well, because through my experience, like I mean, because I collect also play collect console games and stuff. My personal pick for the era of games, I think, or at least the console of choice I'd choose would probably be the PS2 and Xbox systems, or Dreamcast and GameCube and such, the seventh generation consoles. Because I don't know, this is just my experience, but if you look at the games that were released at those systems, you had games that were still released at $60, $80 or such, and they were very much games that only appeal to a small hardcore audience. Like I think an example would be like because I know you've played these games, the Soul Reaver games, for example, or like the Legacy of Kain games. They're games that were released on the PS1,
Yeah.
throughout the '90s, into the mid 2000s, and they were games that had critical and some commercial success, but I can't ever imagine a game like Soul Reaver, like a Soul Reaver 3, ever hitting the stores any time in the future.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think you make a really good point. I think that generation of consoles was the last one where I think developers were really allowed to take risks,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was one of the last generations where you could sell a $60 game that was either 100 hours long or was literally like 3 hours long.
Oh yeah.
It could be a really short arcade game.
Mm.
And people would still play it and people would still love it. But yeah, you would never see that nowadays. Now those are relegated to just small downloadable games. And I mean that maybe that's a win for the consumer, but it's also, it definitely shows a change in
A change in
in
the
what's
market.
been
Yeah.
deemed acceptable, and how the audience. Exactly, the market really has changed, and I'm not even really sure when that happened. I think you could maybe blame it on like Call of Duty and, just bringing in that many more casual gamers and,
Oh,
bringing in this sort of this esport and having a whole different market, or maybe it's something else.
I think, I mean, personally to me, I don't think it was Call of Duty or Battlefield and stuff because games like those were being made well before then. But like like example would be like Quake and Halo. Like they were games that attracted millions of
Yeah.
fans, and they were essentially online games. Like Quake Arena was an online only game, and that was released in I think it was '99 or 2000.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like, you know, I think what ended up happening though was that I've heard this before. I've heard the argument pushed forward by some against some pro, some opposing it. Basically, games have got progressively more expensive to make, and while in the past you could make a game and it would fail and you could still walk away relatively unharmed, now it's sort of on the line of you make a game and it goes bust, your company is basically in the shitter, and you're basically screwed. And I think for a lot of companies, they can't make that risk anymore. Where they, like, for example, a game like Capcom, for example, a company like Capcom, in during the GameCube and the PS2 era, they had the I don't know if you remember it, the Capcom 5.
The Capcom. Oh, yes, I do remember that. Yeah,
It
when
was
they made those. Yep.
Yeah, it was basically they had I think it was a bunch of third person shooters and adventure games. And you consider that if that ever happened again, like if something like that happened again, like a Capcom 5 for one company, for example, that company would go belly up immediately because they wouldn't be able to handle the kind of loss and expenses the games would incur. And what during those games, those 5 games that came out were generally decent games. Like we had Resident Evil 4, one of the arguably for a lot of people one of the best games ever made, and we also have Okami, which is not as commercially or critically successful, but still has a huge number of beloved fans. In fact, and Capcom, they're never going to make Okami 2 or another more traditional Resident Evil, as is seen with the newer stuff and IPs, because it's too risky for them. It's like they fuck up with a new Okami or a new Resident Evil. That's it. The company's is gone. It's basically It's the end of them, basically.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it's way harder for them to take risks, and you'd never see like, yeah, determination of, 5 new IPs or five,
Mm.
franchises committed to a system like that anymore with that. And I think another thing, again, I don't know where this trend came from, same with like the more casual, um, I guess, game trend that's happened over the past generation. But one thing I know you and I both do in our reviews is we
Mm.
don't give scores. We don't
Yes,
give
yes.
number or letter scores. And I think that accounts for a lot of it too, is, how does the game rank on Metacritic? And a lot of gamers, I don't know if people have just changed their minds or if this is just, all the new casual
Yeah,
gamers
yeah.
coming in. But basically if it's 7 out of 10 or less, it's shit and they won't even bother with it, right?
Yeah,
If it's
yeah.
8 or 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, then the game will sell. Then the game is, deemed a success. But if it just, even a 6 or 7 out of 10 game, which could still be a great game,
Yeah.
yeah, it just won't,
That game would
it
not lift
won't,
off.
yeah, make the same impact.
And it kind of sucks
And so, yeah,
because
that's really sad.
oh, because it kind of sucks because I've played, again, there were a lot of really interesting but kind of like in all honesty, a lot of games, like a lot of games I've covered on my channel and stuff, they're not amazing games by any means, but they're definitely the kind of games that stand out in a unique kind of flavor. And while I'm not saying that definitely it's no fault on anyone for choosing a more casual kind of playstyle. I think for a lot of people, it's just much more. It's just a more like you give someone a Call of Duty game, a game that's about 60 to 100 bucks depending where you live. Call of Duty offers a very straightforward experience. Like they come into it, it has a single player campaign that no one's going to play, and they go into the multiplayer immediately, and they basically play it like they did last year. And I think for most
Yeah.
consumers, that's where they want to spend their time at. They don't want to spend their time experimenting with some obscure game like example, Stalker. Like they probably would never play a game like that, but something like a Battlefield or even Halo, which they guaranteed multiplayer experience of a lot of people and a lot of game time, they're more than happy to put down their $60 for something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's the sort of that comfort and that I don't know, maybe it's just brand recognition or like it has the community behind it, but there is certainly sort of a fear behind the unknown for gaming nowadays, and I think it is kind of a scary trend. I hope it reverses itself, but I think it might be tied into just how the industry is ballooning and whirlpooling at the same time in different directions. So
I think
yeah.
because I think yeah, I don't like this. My genuine thoughts would be like, hopefully, Steam will allow more niche kind of or even GOG. They'll encourage more unique kind of games onto their server sites and such. Unfortunately, though, it's sort of like you have Steam and you have Good Old Games. So Good Old Games is generally not affected by this issue, but Steam suffers from a lot of just shovelware that's just shoved down their greenlight, early access pages, and you may have a really unique, really original, story-based, story-heavy or gameplay-heavy kind of game, but it's overshadowed by basically just junk and crap released onto the page, the store page.
Yeah, that's very true too. It's very crowded, and I think that's another detriment to PC gaming is that it is sort of intimidating to get into when you see a library that big and you don't really know where to start. Not only because of the back catalog, but just because of all the new stuff being pushed forward. I heard Gabe Newell, an interview with him a while back, and he said he would like to get rid of Steam Greenlight, and he'd like to look for a more effective way to get independent games onto Steam, because I'm guessing because of the problems you just
Yeah,
highlighted right there. There's a lot of good stuff out there, but you kind of have to be patient and you have to wade through some of the early access stuff that's a risk and some of the shovelware that just ends up on there in, the piles.
and I think it's definitely a shame because I mean I have a great deal of respect for those independent companies. Like I don't know if you know, but there was a modder for Total War games, and he'd been working on mods for Total War games for years and years and years. Anyway, so he finally actually he makes his own game, New Gettysburg. It's basically a American Civil War RTS, and that gets heavily promoted by GOG because they're the kind of people that would sponsor that kind of stuff. They're looking for very much independent, small, up and coming, aspiring game devs. Now Steam, they barely mentioned the game. It was on Steam, but they barely advertised the game as like, hey, look, buy this modder. You've probably played one of his mods. Check him out. And I think that's kind of the flaw of the system. Is sort of like, and I think for a lot of, I mean, again, I think the way GOG is going by sponsoring passionate, high quality game devs is definitely the way to go. While Steam is sort of like this, pretty much the way you push a game onto the PC market, and unfortunately that's kind of the detriment of a lot of really unique and really strong PC games. But yeah, generally I think overall I'd probably say that the way gaming's going is, unfortunately, I just don't see it really I don't really see it as very sustainable in the next 10 years. Like I mean unless it's going to change to like a very multiplayer heavy, very much appealing to the casual market kind of experience. But that's just my point of view.
Yeah, and I think it definitely could go that way. I think probably PC gaming will always be safe, even if the marketplace is kind of
Oh yeah.
become a place you don't want to shop like Steam. There's always going to be a community of modders and game designers out there who, as long as PC stays open, which with Windows seems to be open to staying open, and
Mm.
same with Linux. I think it's going to be fine. We're going to have good games like we've always been playing coming out on PC, and that won't change. But I mean, how the console and how the AAA market reacts, I think that's something that's up in the air, and really I have no idea where that's going to go.
Yeah.
But on that, I guess, light note of, the doom and
Yes.
gloomy future there,
The end of, yeah.
2015, um, this year, hopefully 2016 will be a better year because, there wasn't a whole lot, I guess, that we had to mention from 2015. But if you had to pick a Game of the Year winner, Bloodborne, would that be it for you?
Probably Bloodborne, mostly because I really support and I really promote From Software because they're one of the few game devs that really try and challenge what people expect from their games. Because they're basically saying, here's a game, it's hard, it costs $60, and you may not even beat it, but here it is, here's the challenge, we're offering it up to you. If you don't complete it, then that's your loss, not ours. And I really support, and from an ethical and a kind of story perspective, I really support Bloodborne the most because they seem to care about the industry above and beyond. Now, in all honesty, if the game was released this year, I'd probably immediately give the award to Persona 5 because I'm just a huge sucker to the Shin
Hmm.
Megami Tensei games.
Yeah, and I know that's a big one that, yeah, people were disappointed with getting pushed back. There was a lot of disappointing pushbacks this year. That was another, disappointing trend, but at the same time, a finished game is better than a broken game,
Oh yeah,
so we can't
absolutely,
complain too much.
absolutely. But in overall,
Yeah.
I'd probably say that now I know this talk has pretty much reached nearly an hour, which is pretty shocking, and hopefully, that